Tesco takes in 1 in every £7 spent on the UK high street. It's grown into one of the world's biggest international retailers, employing more than 300,000 people. Much of the expansion of the company in the last 2 decades was driven by Terry Leahy, who stepped down as chief executive a couple of years ago. He's written his account of how he built up the company, and Alan Jordan, sales director of BookBuzz, is going to tell us how he did it, because Terry has written a book, Management in 10 Words. Morning, Alan. How are you?
Morning, Ian.
I have a huge respect for Tesco. It is, whether you like it or not, it is one of the world's few big international companies, about 350,000 employees, sales I think approaching about 40 billion euros a year, and just incredible company. And Terry Leahy, pretty much the man responsible for that.
Yeah, the mild-mannered Clark Kent who turns into a super marketeer. He joined Tesco back in the early 90s in a marketing role, and really he revolutionised the business. And he did it, like, the book is titled 10 Words, Management in 10 Words, and it's words like truth, loyalty. And you look at that and you go, oh, this is going to be the same more kind of bland book. But it's not. It really gets stuck into the meat, potatoes and 2 veg on how he did it. And probably the 4 key areas would be the introduction of the club card, Tesco.com, the internationalisation of the business, and you know, we mentioned it earlier before we went on air about the Fresh and Easy, their kind of first foray into the American market, which the jury is still out there, but no one has really ever cracked that. No British company's ever cracked that.
And it's worth remembering that when he took over, Tesco wasn't the UK's biggest retailer. Sainsbury, Morrison's, the Marks and Spencer were all well ahead of Tesco. It wasn't a very good company at the time.
It wasn't, and even if you go back to retailing back in the 50s and 60s in the UK, I mean, okay, they talk about supermarkets killing the corner shop, but the corner shop, remember, back in the 50s, 40% of the average income was spent on foodstuffs. Now, it's only 6 to 7%. There was only 2,000 product items that a typical store would actually carry. Now it's 40,000. So he would have seen the role and the development of Tesco, and again, from his background in Liverpool, to give people extra choice and to give an affordability, because he grew up in a council estate himself and he knew all about that. But one of his keys was certainly the people. He was a real big people person. We would love that too, because it reflects all of the books that we've been reviewing here over the last year, like Talent Masters, Employees First, the one we did a couple of weeks ago, Smart Customers, Stupid Companies. And that was a huge part. But also one of the key things, and again, probably from his marketing background, was that he kept on asking the customer, what did you want? And you know what? About a year ago, McKinsey produced a report that said, and it's data mining. Data mining can really produce up to a 60% net increase on your margin if you get it right. So keep on asking the customer what they want and then give it to them.
And the big thing you mentioned, one of them was the club card.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's whole thing, that just generated so much business from them, because they just understood their customers so well, and they went into a huge amount of level of detail, just the shopping patterns, what they need to do. But you know what, he went even further, and it's a bit, do you know what he reminds me a little bit of? Remember, Fergal Quinn was really on his own almost in Ireland, introducing new things. He started up a whole series of customer panels where he just asked the customers what they wanted. But more importantly, he got them to redesign their stores. And you know what they ended up saving? They ended up saving $1 million per store, because the way the customers redesigned it, how they laid it out. And then he could do a number of simple things, without just throwing money when they didn't have money back in the 90s, just simple things that we take for granted now. There was no stuff on the aisles, move the shelves down, make it larger, all from feedback from his customers. And
one of the other things Terry Leahy did was bring Tesco around the world. Of course, in Ireland he took over Quinsworth.
Yeah, absolutely. And huge success in Ireland. But then also, there's some, you know, who's the book for it? Well, first of all, if you like a good business read, it's a great book for that. And it's not just for large organisations, because he also talks about just dealing with culture, diversity, and he's a great line on strategy. Because again, he kept the strategy very simple, and he just said, an organisation with lots of strategists is sending a clear signal to the world. We don't know what we are doing. So it really is keep it simple at all times.
He had some unusual inspiration as well for what he was doing.
Yeah, and you know what? He's a great military historian, so he just gobbled up tons of books. I love him because he has a phrase in the book about saying bringing fresh thinking to the business, and a lot of his fresh thinking came from military history. Napoleon, there's Viscount Slims, there's Lord Admirals of the Navy, but then also current brand matters. He read a lot of books to understand what was happening around the world globally, and then he started applying a lot of basic, simple principles to business. I remember we mentioned before we went on air, a little bit like Dennis Brosnan in Kerryford. He would say himself he was a shy man, but he just got in, got it done, got the people on board. But the key thing was he just kept on listening to the customers.
And since he left a couple of years ago, Tesco has suffered a little bit. I mean, I know in Ireland they are still the market leader, but if you look at what's happening in the UK, first profit warning in 20 years and billions wiped off the value of its share price since the start of the year.
Well, in fairness, the day after Terry Lee stepped down, the share price dropped down by $1 billion. Just an amazing character. It's a great read. Anybody interested in business, understanding the Tesco thing, but just understanding business and just the simple things you can do, because he was very much a people person. And one of the simple things he did was that he worked himself 1 week in an actual store. But the big part there, he got 3,000 of his managers to do the same, and that's where they picked up all of the issues, the problems, the little things that they needed to fix from just talking to staff and finding out what's going on. So a lot of people in business could take a leaf out of his book.
Okay, Alan Jordan, Sales Director of BookBuzz, thank you very much for joining us this morning. That book by Terry Leahy, former Chief Executive of Tesco, Management in 10 Words. It is fascinating, and I'm going to have a read of it later on. Now, up next is